to Leitner. Puts it up.
You're listening to the Culture State Podcast.
Get ready. Woo!
All right, welcome to another great episode of the Culture State Podcast. I'm Chris Lee. That is my man, Dennis Cox. And this is one that it feels special for me because, in which a lot of these feel special for me being from North Carolina, but this one feels special from the perspective of recently Dennis and I went to a show, and it was Big Pooh, rapper Big Pooh. We've had him on the show. He's a friend of the show, and he brought out some special guests. It was like a 20-year reunion of the Justus League. And if you're not familiar with the Justus League, they're a collective of MCs, producers from around, well, they met up in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. They're from all over, but they all went to school in the area around the same time. And of course, the biggest ones that came out of that was Little Brother, Ninth Wonder, Khrysis, but a lot of the MCs that are in there are very dope and people that I, was familiar with and played on my first radio show or my second radio show back at UNCG. And I was so happy that I got a chance to introduce Dennis to some of that music. And today we have the founder of the Justus League, Cesar Comanche, as our guest for today.
Now, people may hear Justice League and think Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash. Trust me, I know exactly how you feel in that regard. But no, the Justice League here in North Carolina, like you said, is a collection of all these MCs, these DJs, these producers, all just kind of collaborating together and working together, not actually forming like a big super group, but just kind of like, hey, we could bounce ideas off each other. Like another MC could pop in and do a verse for a song, maybe produce something for another group. So it's this collection of guys that, again, came together in this area, in the Raleigh-Durham area, and really took the hip-hop scene to another level here in the state of North Carolina. And things start to spread nationally. People nationally and even internationally started seeking these guys out in terms of, with their music. So to see that build from literally a dorm room at NC State is how a lot of this started, was in a dorm room at NC State, to where it is now, where they have national acclaim. Like you mentioned, Ninth Wonder. He's worked with people like Jay-Z. Kanye West has done music with these guys. That's the kind of level that they're taking to. Now, I will say for me, Chris, the last couple of years, you really have introduced me to a lot of these guys. So what I'm listening to is still fresh and new to me. So I know for you, having been around it for nearly 20 years, have a much different level of appreciation for it than I ever could, because it's something that you have seen grow through your time as you've grown up.
Yeah, that's true. But you know what? Also, like, it still feels new to me in the sense that, I will be honest in saying that back in those days, I probably listened to certain songs more so on a rotation from all these guys. And now I'm starting to get into a lot of their albums since going to that show and really going back and taking a really deep listen to some of those things. And I'm getting that new sense of appreciation, like Legacy's album Project Mayhem. Yeah. After seeing him, perform I'm a Star, I've heard Legacy rap a bunch of times on certain songs back and forth. But I didn't take time to really listen to an album. And I listened to Project Mayhem recently. I'm like, this is really good. Yeah. Happened to run into Legacy also in real life, before we were recording this, after the show. And so it was just one of those things where, like, I'm also getting a newfound appreciation for them, the Justus League, what they've done and what they were doing at the time. And I kind of wish that even though I had a whole radio show that was based on North Carolina hip hop and R&B, that I still did more to try to put out that type of music and promote that type of music. From what, I was capable of doing back in the day.
And I will say this as well, seeing the music where it's gone from like grassroots, like, again, starting in a dorm room at NC State to where it's grown now, like literally just something that you see often nowadays with content creators in terms of, YouTube shows or podcasts, just starting something small, then it organically growing. These guys did it a long, long time ago. And to see where these guys are now and still have that popularity and listening to a lot of that music, like you mentioned, Project Mayhem by Legacy, I went and listened to that the other day as well. And I'm thinking, man, if this dropped today, people will be all over it. And this came out in 2005. So
Absolutely.
it just their music has staying power, which is a big thing, as opposed to something that's, maybe popular, like fun in the moment type song that's popular for a short bit and then kind of just goes away. This stuff has staying power, and that's a testament to the work that these guys put in.
Absolutely. Well, let's not waste any more time because this was a pretty long interview, but it was a good interview, and we've learned so much. My man, Cesar Comanche, he is one of the MCs of the Justice League. He's also the founder of the Justice League, and you'll hear the story right here next on the Culture State Podcast. The person who began the Justice League, which is a whole host of MCs, including, Sean Boog, Lil Brother, Cesar Comanche himself, Edgar Allan Flo, so many different people that's a part of it, along with producers, Khrysis, Knife Wonder, others. And Cesar Comanche, you're the one that began everything. And first off, I didn't know that portion of it until we went to this show. So for context, people who listen, Big Pooh had a show for his album release in Raleigh recently. Dennis and I went. We were 100% fans that night, and we're not ashamed of it. And, and they gave you your props, man, and said that you're the one who kind of began the whole thing. So we wanted to definitely talk to you about that. So first off, thank you so much for joining the show. How are you doing today?
Hey, man, I'm doing great, man. Just glad to be here. This is a wonderful thing y'all got going on. And, yeah, this is just real cool, fellas. Thank y'all for inviting me.
Oh, yeah, no problem. So just let's start off with that as far as the collection of MCs and the also the impact that the collection has made on the North Carolina hip hop scene, but also nationally. You guys got national acclaim as well, and I remember that kind of back in the day. How did this all start? Like, I know it all comes from an idea, but how did that idea become like a real thing? And who do you start talking to? How does this thing start forming? And what's the beginning stages of the Justice League?
Well, actually, the cats who actually are the co-founders it's Ninth and myself. We both started, the league. Pretty much what happened at first, this was the late 90s. I had already known Ninth. I met him. We met each other in like 1996, summer school at NC State. A lot of us went to NC State. A lot of us went to NC Central. And Ninth happened to go to both schools at different times, So 96, he met me. We didn't know that either of us were interested in music beyond just being fans of it, just loving it, Not until 98, I think, did we discover that, I wrote and had aspiring wants to be an MC, and he was, just learning how to put beats together and stuff like that. And well, him and Urel, who was also a producer in the Justice League, in the dorm room at 308 North Hall at NC State. Urel had a computer, and we had this he had a recording program. And the messed up thing about it is, it was so archaic, you couldn't save the session. So when you recorded a song, you had to play it live and figure out how to record it on tape just then. And if the power went out or or something crazy happened, it was over. You had to do the whole jam again. So anyway, then we finally we were messing with that first, and we got good at that. And then finally we got a version you could actually save. It was over. So we were making songs in the dorm room, and we would just ask cats hey, come check out, working on songs to be in Carmichael Gym, balling and stuff. And honestly, nobody would come check it out. So the only people that was coming to the dorm room were the original cats that ended up being in the Justice League. So we were all listening to each other's songs. We didn't necessarily know each other. Knife knew everybody. I knew some of the cats, and eventually, started knowing everybody. But Ninth and Urel wanted to be producers for this group called the Lower Thirds. and they also went to NC State. And the lower thirds were actually probably the first rap group, along with these other cats at State called the Jedi Squad, and it was amazing because they were the first people I ever met that rapped and like had songs of their own. This, like I said, this is still the late 90s. So that was their dream, Urel and Knights. So what ended up happening is the lower thirds had a show, and Ninth and Urel had somehow thought that they became down with their crew, and it was a flyer. And on that flyer, it had the lead MC's name was Omatati, the DJ's name was DJ Resident. I remember this like it was yesterday. They had WL, and Ninth and Urel's names were not on that flyer at all, nowhere. So Urel kind of just accepted it. Ninth felt some kind of way about it. So then Omatati, which is again the leader of the lower thirds, came through just randomly, and Ninth and him got into a huge argument. It was no love loss or nothing like that because we were all friends, but that argument was heated. And I remember I kept saying, you know what? While the argument's happening, I kept saying, like, why don't we start our own crew? They kept arguing. And I know I said it again at some point, and then I just left it alone, and then they just agreed to disagree. Later on that same day, get a call, Ninth hits me. Comanche, why don't we start our own crew, yo?
I mean, I kind of said that, you know. Yeah. All right. But cool. Yeah, good idea.
Oh, you read my mind.
And then he said, like, what we going to call it? We're going to call it the Justus League. And so, yeah, he came up with the name. And it was spelled the correct way at the beginning. And Big Doe came up with the idea to change it to JUSTUS just to make sure we didn't get any type of legal stuff with DC Comics and stuff. I mean, I wasn't thinking about any of that. I'm not thinking that, one, anybody's going to care, first of all. Like, we just some college students. I can't see beyond what the current situation is. So we changed it, you know, to Justice, and they just, you know, we rock with that. And then the funny thing about it is now there used to be something called Blackout at NC State, and it would happen every spring, and it was like kind of like the getting ready for, you know, school to be over type thing, and we have a big party, something like that. So it was a show, and I want to say it was like might have been like 99, and I was like, and I happened to be performing at the show. Median was performing at the show. Phonte was performing at the show. Edgar Allan Flo was the same show. And we were going back to back.
Ooh.
And I said, well, I went up there and said, my name is Cesar Comanche, and I'm part of a crew called the Justus League. Like, and that was the first time it was ever said out loud. And the wild thing about it is, I never asked Flo, Phonte, nor Median if they wanted to be in the crew. It was just like me and these other cats. We part of this crew called the Justus League. And nobody, you know, had any disagreements with it. I guess nobody had nothing better going on. So we just did that, and it just started that way. It was just kind of like a happenstance thing because none of us, except for me and Edgar Allan Flo, are both from Jacksonville, North Carolina. But we didn't know each other in Jacksonville, North Carolina. Now, we didn't meet until up here in Raleigh and NC State. But nobody was from the same place. We were all from different backgrounds, all this type of stuff. And we just all happened to love boom bap, soulful music. Because at that time, in the late 90s, that really wasn't what cats was trying to hear, especially not in the South, especially not in North Carolina. Everybody was wanting to hear, like, you know, just to give examples of y'all remember Rough Riders, that kind of sound, and, you know, the
Pastor Troy, Miracle, Bounce.
Right. Yeah. And that was what, you know, cats was into. And people were like, man, like, y'all trying to make this archaic save hip hop type of rap. I don't know, man. I mean, your heart's in the right place, but it ain't gonna work. And that's what we just kept getting told. It ain't gonna work. It ain't gonna work. It ain't gonna work. And then, you know, and we finally built a studio like in my apartment, Missy Ann Studios, which when I say studios, I mean we had the ability to record. So, so I'm just using the term studio loosely.
Yeah.
So once we started getting that off, and we didn't really get that jumped off until like late 2000, early 2001. We've been a crew since 99. And it kind of was a lull period. And then when I met Boog, and he came to Missy Ann and started recording late 2000, early 2001, I had already had an album out. I forgot to say that. I put my first album out in 2000.
Wooden Nickels, right?
Right, yeah, exactly. And nobody knew who I was. I mean, when I say nobody. So I was just I was selling it off the strength of just talking to people, coming up to people, you know, just, hey, check this out. I got this CD. And see, at that time, the fact that I had an actual professional CD, it wasn't no CDR. I actually had official manufacturing for it. I paid for it myself. That was impressive at that time. Mm-hmm. And people were just buying it off the like, yo, you're really serious about this. You know what I'm saying?
Now, I want to get in a question about getting paid with music, because you mentioned how a lot of your stuff got leaked on LimeWire, Napster, all those different platforms, and your stuff kind of got out there, which you guys don't see a cent for any of that kind of stuff. Now, I want to know, how hard was it for you all? I know Little Brother has spoken about this, about a lot of these albums or these record labels not paying the checks that they were owed to you guys. Was that something that you personally encountered yourself? And I know it's something that other guys in the Justus League encountered.
Yes. See, the thing about me is I did my business a different way. When it came to when I worked with labels, see, what I did is I only partnershiped with labels. I never signed on to a label. It was like, okay, so let's say the first album I did with a different label was, two albums. It was Squirrel and the Aces and Squirrel and the Aces, the Japan tour. One was with the Japanese record label, the other one with a domestic record label. For the Japanese one, all I did was do a deal with them to where it's like, okay, nobody else is going to be able to release this album for the next, or, you know, manufacture it for the next, I think it was 5 years at the time. And they just broke me off change for the exclusivity. Mm-hmm. That was it. And at the same time, I made a regular Squirrel and the Aces. So I put out those albums in the same year. I had a Squirrel and the Aces Japan tour that only came out in Japan physically. And then I had a Squirrel and the Aces that came out in the rest of the world. So, and then what I did with the domestic label was I was like, I don't want an advance. I don't want any money. I want you to manufacture all this stuff, a bunch of vinyl, a bunch of whatever. You take your half, give me the other half, and I'll make my own advance from the sales. So I designed my way to where I didn't owe nobody money ever. LB was actually signed to labels. You see what I'm saying? So then it was a lot of whatever. And also, I own all my music. I don't think LB started owning as a little brother of their group. I think this album they just put out, May the Lord Watch, may be the first album they owned the music and everything right out. Wow. So you got to keep in mind that their first album, 2002, 2003, and that album came out, 2021? And that's 2019. 2019, right.
Yeah.
That's the first time they owned everything.
Let me ask you this to piggyback off of that, because, you know, just as a crew, do you guys maybe sit back and look, or maybe you individually sit back and look like there was enough of us to where if we would have kind of pulled together and made maybe a Justus League Records and, I'm like the radio promotions person. I can make the calls, and this person can make sure everything's printed up, and this person can make sure the tours are right. If you guys kind of made the official operation outside of being a crew, that maybe things would have gone gone a little bit longer or anything. Was that a thought process that ever reached your mind?
Well, the thing about that is some people think like that, what you just said, Chris.
Okay.
And some artists are just artists.
Enough said.
And
I get it. I get it.
That's fair.
Nothing you can do about that.
Yeah,
That's fair.
I get it.
Yeah, but the thing about it is I mean, I know, Ninth is still going on and building his career and flourishing. Phonte is flourishing. Pooh and Phonte together are starting to flourish again. Myself, I've been steadily going on like this whole time. I know with other cats, they've kind of gone on and off, because life, family, all that stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I mean, we're still JL and still doing. It's just now it's got to the point where there's really no way. I mean, sorry, Khrysis is still going on with his brand, and Boog just started back up with his not too long ago. But we're to the point now where we couldn't even do that necessarily because it's too many moving parts going in too many directions. And honestly, that's the way I wanted it to be. I didn't want us to be dependent.
You didn't want it to be a cash money situation where it's one group and all that. Like as far as on business, you wanted to kind of have like a collection of guys that all had their own thing going on, but you guys were just kind of together.
Right. Like friendship wise, we could deal with each other, collaborate on the art and the creativity part of it. But my business is my business and how we do it. Ninth is his, Phonte is his, Boog, etc. I wanted us to be to where, let's just say, not trying to put in universe, if everybody else stopped making music, if one person is, they won't be hurt by everybody else stopping to make music. You dig?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I wanted. But yeah, I mean, I know I wear a lot of hats for my thing that I do, and then I have people that I work with and stuff like that. And then collab with L.E.G.A.C.Y because me and Ninth and Khrysis, and we still do music together. I feel was the biggest thing because this whole world, it's like an underworld. So you just gotta go into this knowing who you are and accepting who you are before you really get into this. So learning these type of lessons and bridges being burned for no reason at all, betrayals and all this, it's a soap opera, man. It's wild out here, man.
Yeah.
So like you just gotta do your best.
Now, is this about NC State or the music? I'm just playing.
Oh,
yes. The answer is yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, man. So like for me, it's like, I'm lucky that I've come through this thing and like still able to do things and, be viable. And because I haven't, like, what y'all saw was the first time I performed since 2019.
Wow.
So that was even like I have to get back used to that because ever since 2004 I've been touring every year up to 2019.
Wow.
And
that's
so
amazing.
that even was a big lump of all of a sudden you just looking around like, oh snap. And you got to be strong to be able to take that drastic change. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, but I'm slowly gonna get back into it. Hopefully 2023 I'll be branching out more and more back on that scene and stuff. But yeah, man, like I never thought I've toured 14 countries off this music.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. But yeah, no, you gotta be able to roll with the punches for sure. It's ups and downs, ups and downs. That's what the music is. Feast and famine. That's what this life is.
Big thanks to Cesar Comanche for joining us, giving us some time. I look forward to us growing our relationship with him and knowing more of the Justus League story, maybe working with him in certain type of ways. And so if we end up doing that, we will keep you guys posted on what we end up doing with that. But hopefully, we'll have some special things coming up with the Justus League and other musical acts. And that's one of the things with Culture State. That's what this is about. Like if we can do anything to help promote the musical acts, the any type of artists, maybe film directors, whatever we can do. If you're coming from North Carolina, it doesn't have to be just sports. We want to know what you have going on. We want to be able to help put out your story, and we want to help support you in whatever way possible.
Hey, we celebrate the state of North Carolina. And by the way, if you want to check out maybe like a little cut or a little clip of what we saw at the Poorhouse in Raleigh when we saw that Justus League reunion together, go at Culture State Pod on Twitter or Instagram. We have a little video clip up there of seeing all these guys, like you mentioned, Cesar Comanche, EA Flow, Legacy, Chaundon, Little Brother,
Joe Scudder, Sean Boog.
Yeah, all these guys back on the stage together doing what they do best. And absolutely just an amazing night at the Poorhouse. And one thing I will say real fast was to close things out. The Poorhouse in Raleigh kind of gave us the feel of what it was for these guys, I'm sure, in terms of back it was in 2002, 2003 when they were growing, this very underground, independent feel. Like kind of like a little bit raw and gritty, I guess you could say, for lack of a better term.
Those are the exact same words I was going to use.
Yeah, it was kind of raw and gritty, and being in that venue with these guys performing, it's like, hey man, this is how it started. It was raw, gritty, it was underground, and it grew. But they had a following, and that's how things built. And just seeing people there that were just mind blown, like the Justus League is back together. We've been waiting for over 15 years for this to happen, and to see it on stage, it was a great thing to be part of.
And I think another thing that's cool about that too is, we lightly touched on the international aspect of and how, some of these guys have been able to do this overseas. You can just imagine that these same performers being able to have the same atmosphere all around the world with these smaller venues, raw and gritty, you know what I'm saying? And like, we're not talking about these huge stadium tours. We're talking about like a world tour of like a lot of underground things. And to me, that's even amazing as well, that you can touch. That's when you're really touching the people, I think, is when you have a lot of those smaller shows, because people can walk up to you, they can talk to you, they can relate to you, they can take pictures with you and everything, and you can hear their stories and that type of thing. It's a little bit different than when you have this huge stage and you're separated by barricades and things like that. Like, no, like, there wasn't a lot of security there. Somebody wanted to jump on stage, they probably could have. Now they probably would have gotten pushed off stage by everybody on there. But that's the feel, and it was so cool seeing that and witnessing that for us.
Yeah, after the show, we got to just go up to these guys and start chatting with them. It was a cool thing, just being able to think, hey man, thanks for a great show, thanks for all the music you put out, us introducing ourselves, meeting these people. It was a great time. Well, Chris, people can catch us not, like the Justus League, you want to catch them live, or these artists live, they can talk to us. Well, you can come check us out live Saturdays, 10 to noon on 99.9 The Fan, WRL Sports Plus, WRLSportsFan.com. You can catch us. We're back. We're back live. We were just in Greenville, North Carolina for
Fun
NC
time.
State ECU. It was a blast out there. Big thanks to the folks over there at ECU. So make sure you come listen to us Saturdays on The Fan.
Absolutely. And make sure you follow us. He said it earlier, at Culture State Pod on Twitter and Instagram, at Chris Lee TV, at The Fan Rookie. And we'll be back next week with another great podcast. Culture State, baby. Get some of your life. Culture me, daddy.
The Culture State Podcast, part of the Capital Broadcasting Podcast Network, with new shows coming out every Wednesday. Download and subscribe from wherever you get your podcasts, including the WRL Sports Fan app.